What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. So today we're going to talk about choosing the right Iso-8 class for your character. Right now there's 5 different classes currently in the game. You have Raider, Striker, Skirmisher, which all deal around the vulnerable debuff, and then we also have Healer and Fortifier. So we're going to talk about each class individually, talk about what you should look for in a character that kind of helps you determine what Iso-8 class to throw on them, and also some different circumstances per character kits that may make you want to change those things around. So let's start off with we'll start off with Healer and Fortifier, since those are on their own and they don't really tie into other classes. We'll start with those two first. Now let's talk about Healer. We'll just go for Ebony Maw right now. So healers are all about healing, obviously. I mean, there's nothing crazy about that, and this is pretty much, you know, boost the active healing on the character. They gain bonus max health, and then they're able to apply healing to characters with lowest max health. And so yeah, it's very much for healers. Now you don't have to just have healers with this. Like for instance, Ebony Maw, he doesn't really have any healing abilities, and the one healing ability he does have is not an active healing ability. If you go back and look at Healer here, you see that it says that they gain bonus active healing. That means the abilities that you use that actively heal your team, an ability that you have to use. So passives will not be affected by that healer ability. At least I don't believe they do. I haven't seen anything saying that they do otherwise. But what that means is that pretty much if anybody has any sort of active heal, like let's go over to Shield Medic, they have an active heal, she has an active heal, and that is boosted by the healing Iso-8 class. So her emergency treatment, it revives allies for a percentage maximum of this character's health, and additional flat amount too. So this will get boosted by 5% because of that healer Iso-8. So that is where you want to go for sometimes, but also support classes like I just showed Ebony Maw. Let's see, for instance, Emma Frost and Mr. Sinister. I have healer on both of them. Neither one, both these characters are also ones that use a lot of non-attack abilities. Like for instance, the Diamond form, the team-wide cleanse, short cooldown. She's going to be spamming this a lot, and that just kind of removes the debuffs on your team and applies slow on the enemy team. Turn the tables, once again, no direct damage. So characters that have a lot of these kinds of abilities where they're cleansing or debuffing the enemy team, not dealing direct damage, Healer is a great way to fortify that character. Not really fortify, I don't want to get you guys confused, but Healer would be a great class to choose for that kind of character because they're not doing a lot of direct attacks, and in turn, they're just going to be healing up your team quite a bit. Plus, Marauders, as it is right now, Marauders are very annoying to fight on defense. So you have a couple of characters in here who are healing them up as well. Yeah, that can get kind of annoying. So Healer, great for healers, obviously. Also good for support characters who don't use a lot of direct attacks. Those are where you want to go for. Let's talk about Fortifier. Right now, Fortifier at level 1 is very, very underwhelming. It's just barriering the self for 10,000 health at the start of the fight. That's not a lot. We were talking about this in the Envoy chat last night. Wolverthor brought it up. He felt pretty underwhelmed by Fortifier. And honestly, that's not to be surprised. 10,000 barrier, that's not a lot. The power is going to be coming in with the additional levels. At level 3, you get another 10,000, and at level 5, you get another 15,000. So eventually, you'll be getting 35,000 barrier on spawn, which is great. And also putting the barrier on themselves for 3 to 4% at level 4. It's another 4%. So 7% of their max health per turn with barrier. That's a lot. Now, obviously, barrier is great for tanks. This is where you want to go for with Fortifier. Tanks are basically the easy option for Fortify because they're going to be attacked a lot. So if you can put barrier on them, you can constantly keep that barrier up. It's a great way to go. Colossus is an easy choice for that. We'll go back to Shield here. Shield's going to have some interesting examples. We go back to Shield and we're going to talk about Shield security. I mean, he's constantly taunting. So if you can throw barrier on him with Fortify, I mean, that's an easy choice. Constantly taunting, and people are going to have to constantly hammer him. He's going to have defense up. He's going to be gaining a lot of barrier at the same time. So yeah, I mean, that's an easy option. Tanks are very easy options for the most time with barrier and the Fortify Iso-8 class. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Number one, Coal Obsidian. You guys probably know his kit by now. He constantly retaliates if someone attacks Ebony Maw or Thanos. So barrier's not an easy option for him. You can see I've been changing things up. I was trying Skirmisher with something, but honestly, for someone who's gonna be countering a lot like this, Raider's gonna be easy one. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. But yeah, it's gonna kind of depend on the kit for the character. So you do have certain tanks that will assist or counter. Ms. Marvel is another good option. She's constantly assisting, so you may want to try switching something over to her where she can constantly apply marked and allow other members on the team to pretty much counter and apply basically exploit the invulnerable debuff with the Striker, Iso-8, something like that. So there are options for other tanks besides Fortify, but most of your tanks are going to want to go for the Fortify Iso-8 class. Now let's move over to Raider and Skirmisher and also Striker. Let's just start with symbiotes. I mean, symbiotes are the hot commodity right now. Everybody's really loving symbiotes. I've got a couple different classes on them right now. I have Raider on 2 of them, and I have Striker on 2 others. Anti-Venom, I will likely be putting Healer on him. We'll see how that works out. But let's start with Raider. Raider is about boosting the crit chance and the crit damage of your characters, and also allowing them to apply vulnerable every time they score a critical hit. Here's where this gets really interesting. This is where you want to use Raider over Skirmisher. Skirmisher allows you to apply vulnerable to the primary target. Makes sense, right? So this is a guaranteed vulnerable on the primary target if they attack. All right. Raider is a little bit better based on the kits, because if someone does a lot of splash damage, meaning they hit the primary target and adjacent targets, or they also chain a lot, Raider probably is going to be better because it's for every crit that character scores, meaning it's not just the primary target, it's also the adjacent targets that can also get the vulnerable applied to them. That's a big deal. Now allows you to really spread out a lot of vulnerable pretty quickly. So this is why I've got Scream and Symbiote Spider-Man both with Raider on them, because they have a lot of chain, splash damage, AoE attacks. Scream, I mean, you've got the adjacent and chaining attacks. There's a lot of splash damage with Scream. Symbiote Spider-Man, you guys know him by now. He chains on his basic, and he does splash damage with his special. And his ultimate hits everybody on the enemy team, and it's unavoidable. So Raider on him is an easy choice here. You got a lot of vulnerable going around because of Scream and Symbiote Spider-Man, and then that's where Carnage and Venom come into play. We'll talk about Striker here in a moment, but let's go to Skirmisher. And this one, it's pretty much good for just applying the primary hit will apply vulnerable to that target. So it's just the primary target. So if you have a lot of single target attacks that are just going to be focused on one target, that's probably a good point for you to throw in a that kind of Skirmisher Iso-8 class. I don't really have a lot of those, mostly because Raider, I do a lot of splash damage with a lot of these characters. I don't have a lot of Skirmisher going around. I do have Skirmisher on Proxima. I do have Skirmisher on Thanos. And then I've got Striker on Corvus. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But yeah, so Skirmisher is good for applying like single target kind of attacks. And if you have a character who does a lot of single target attacks, Skirmisher is great for that. But let's talk about Striker. Striker is what you use to exploit the vulnerable debuff. And this is interesting because if you go and look at it, it's a little confusing as to the language of this. On the primary hit, if the target is vulnerable, make it an ISO bonus attack at 50% damage, then clear 1 vulnerable. This attack is based on the character's basic, gain plus 5% damage. So the Striker ability, the Striker class does gain bonus damage as well, which is great for some characters. But what this means is that if there is vulnerable on the character applied by Skirmisher or by Raider, the Striker is going to follow up and is going to attack that target again for bonus damage. Now, it also says this attack is based on the character's basic. One thing to note with this means that they use their basic attack again, and that brings in the benefits of that basic attack as well. So if you have a character who has a very strong basic, whether it applies debuffs or it dispels, God willing it dispels, that means that bonus attack with Iso-8, the Iso-8 bonus, gets a little more powerful. Like for example, Venom, I've got Striker on him, he's going to attack again, and he applies bleed for 1 turn. He can flip positive effects to negative effects. The one that I think is like the perfect standard for Striker is going to be Black Bolt, because his basic dispels abilities are positive buffs as well. So you can use you can use Black Bolt. He attacks something with his special or his ultimate, and he does a follow-up with his Iso-8 bonus attack. It's going to do this basic attack. It's going to have the ability to dispel. That's a pretty big deal. So it's only 50% of the damage, which is not good. I mean, it was not that much. No, I'm saying it's not good. It's not a lot of damage, but the effects of that basic attack are what's very important for Striker. So if you have someone who does some really, really good stuff with that basic attack, that's going to be very powerful. Now, the one thing to note is that I don't know if assists work with that basic attack as well. If Corvus Glaives does the basic, I've never seen him call Proxima to assist with that Iso-8 bonus attack. So I don't think assists come into play. That'd probably be a little too powerful. But other effects like dispel, negative effects, dispelling, that kind of stuff, all those will work with that basic attack and the Iso-8 bonus. So it's very important to know that before going in and choosing who to use for Striker. Now let's talk about some like the standards and some different examples for throwing these teams together. One that I actually got a lot of questions about in my beginner's guide video yesterday is what to do with this character. Now let's take a look at her kit. She's always going to open up with this ultimate that hits everyone on the enemy team. She has this command undead ability, and she also has this attack that can hit twice. For me, I think an easy choice for Hela is going to be Raider, because she's able to use that AoE attack. She can apply at least 1 or 2 vulnerable debuffs with that up front. She has her basic, which can hit 2 characters. I think Raider is a pretty good option for her. You can also go for possibly Skirmisher on her. The Black Blade ability, it doesn't do too much. I mean, it does hit some piercing damage here. It does flip death proof. So you could go for Striker on her, but I think because she's hitting multiple targets, I think she's better off going as a sort of Raider or Skirmisher character, able to apply the vulnerable debuff and allow other members on her party to exploit that debuff. Let's talk about, let's see, you guys were asking about Phoenix too. I've got Raider on her because she has a lot of AoE damage, especially as Dark Phoenix. I think Raider's a pretty good option for her. Let's go back to Shield because I want to talk about Shield. Shield's like the perfect example of the power of Raider. If you guys don't know already, Shield Assault is incredibly powerful with that Shield minion team with Nick Fury and Coulson. On War Defense, she's able to give the team 50% bonus crit chance. Then you throw in the class and you have them use, you throw Raider on this. Raider is then also going to increase the crit chance of the team or of the character by 25%. So that means with the 25% there, plus 50 from Shield Assault, plus the 10% that the character has as a base, Shield Assault could potentially be running 85% crit chance with a fully upgraded Raider Iso-8. That is absolutely absurd. So the Shield minion team with Nick Fury and Coulson on War Defense, they are a very high based crit chance build. So it's a perfect example of throwing Raider out there, getting some exploits in with them, and makes them pretty freaking powerful, if I do say so myself. I'm gonna throw my calculator up here in a moment because we're gonna have some we're gonna do a little bit of math as well. But yeah, so Shield's a great option for that. We'll get the calculator out of there at the moment. But yeah, so if you're looking for something like that, and then let's talk about Power Armor. Power Armor is another good option. I'm actually building them up right now. I've got Healer on Ironheart and Rescue, and then I've got Raider on War Machine and Falcon. I'm gonna put Striker on Iron Man, but if I'm using Ultron with them in War, I'm gonna have Striker on Ultron because let me see if I can pull him up here. Striker on Ultron, he's got a lot of single target damage, but also this basic can steal positive effects if he uses it as a striker. So if he uses something and then if he uses an attack on a vulnerable target, he's gonna follow up with that basic and dispel. Yeah. you guys are seeing the power of these Iso-8 and why I'm pretty excited for them. So let's talk Thanos. Now, Thanos is an interesting one. If you got Black Order, Skirmisher is a great option for him. Raider is too. Both those options are going to work pretty well for him if you are using that team. If you do not have Black Order with this character, this is where Fortifier is really going to come in for power, like really come in and show that power. Right now at 7.7, he's sitting at about 387,000 health. So if we take that and we take the, we also increase it because you increase it by 20% because of the Iso-8 bonuses. With that, he's sitting at 464,000 health. Now you throw that Fortifier in with that. If you take that and you do 7% of his max health per turn, that's 32,000 barrier on him every single one of his turns. That's the kind of power of Fortifier, and that's why Fortifier is not good at level 1, but as you upgrade it, you can see just how much stronger this is going to be in the long run. Let's take a look at another option here. Colossus. A lot more people have Colossus. He's going to be a great tank. Here he is at 5'7". That's 226,000 health. So we will let's increase that by 20%, and then you do 7% of that every turn. That's 19,000 barrier on Colossus every single turn. So yeah, you guys can see the power of Fortifier, the healer ability also as well. You guys can see how strong these classes are going to be with that kind of stuff. So let me know down below if you guys have any questions about these Iso-8 classes and choosing the right one. Let me know down below. But as always, if you guys have enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, share, and subscribe to the channel for more Marvel Strike Force content in the future. And as always, I will see you guys next time.